Welcome to Twist TV, where reality bends, secrets surface, and nothing is what it seems. I'm your narrator, your guide through the strange and the unsettling. Tonight, let me take you into the silence of a locked bathroom, where every night, for exactly 7 minutes, a girl named Lívia whispered into an old phone, not to talk, but to survive. Because when the truth can't be spoken out loud, it finds another way to escape. At exactly 10:37 p.m., Lívia stepped into the bathroom and locked the door. Not a second earlier, not a second later. The click of the lock was soft, almost ritualistic, the only sound she allowed herself to trust. The rest of the apartment was silent. Not the comforting kind of silence, but the watchful one, the kind that hides behind walls. She turned the shower on, not to bathe, but to muffle the sound. Then she reached behind the mirror. Her fingers found the loose tile, slid it aside, and pulled out the old phone she kept hidden there. It had no SIM card, no internet, just one app, a voice recorder. She sat on the closed toilet seat, held the phone close, and hit record. Audio number 123, she whispered. Today I dreamed I was running barefoot. My legs hurt. There were trees and a scream, but not mine. Her voice was steady. It always was during these 7 minutes. Mom made lasagna. She forgot to put salt again. He smiled like always. Told her it was perfect. She smiled back. Then he looked at me. She paused. I didn't look away this time. That was the truth. Tonight, when Leonardo looked at her across the dinner table, the way he always did, quietly asserting control with those calculating eyes, she didn't lower hers. She stared back. Not with defiance, not yet, but enough to make him blink first. It had been a victory, small, invisible, but hers. The sound of the shower filled the room like static. Lívia leaned against the wall. She looked nothing like a rebel. Her school uniform still hung on the hook. Her hair was neat, her fingernails clean. Her mother said she was lucky to be raised in a stable home. Stability, that's what they called silence. Her 7 minutes were almost up. She ended the recording, tucked the phone back into the hidden space, replaced the tile, turned off the shower, and opened the door. Back into the apartment, back into the performance. Leonardo was sitting on the couch reading. He didn't look up. Marcia, her mother, was folding towels. She smiled when she saw Lívia. "You're getting so tall," she said absently. Lívia just nodded. She'd heard that line every week since she was 12. Her mother didn't see her, not really. And maybe that was safer. She walked to her room, closed the door, and lay on the bed. There was no crying. Lívia had stopped crying when she was 11. The last time she cried, Leonardo had crouched next to her and said, "Don't waste your voice on useless things." She never did again. The next day at school, she walked the hallways like a ghost in pressed uniform and polished shoes. No one asked questions. Her classmates liked her, or at least the version of her they were allowed to see. Quiet, polite, top of the class. But someone was watching her. Not like Leonardo, different. Teo, the boy from upstairs, always carrying a notebook. He had moved into the building 2 months ago. They'd shared one elevator ride, one nod, one quiet, "good morning." But at school, he'd started showing up near her classroom. Not talking, just noticing. Lívia noticed him too, and that made her nervous. Because attention was dangerous, especially when you've spent years hiding. Lívia hated the feeling of being noticed. It wasn't fear exactly. It was worse. It was exposure. And ever since Teo had looked at her that way in the hallway last week, something in her routine had shifted. He didn't do anything suspicious. No questions, no smiles too long. Just that gaze, analytical but gentle. A little like a mirror that didn't lie. That Thursday at 10:37 p.m. the lock clicked. Shower on, phone retrieved. Audio number 127. "I think he's watching me." Not Leonardo. A boy upstairs from school. Her voice was low. "I don't know if he sees too much or just sees me. I shouldn't want that." She hesitated. "Today I passed by the photo wall in the hallway again. There's a picture missing. I didn't notice before. A square of cleaner paint where a frame used to be. I remember..." Silence. "I remember a child." Not me. A chill ran down her spine. She quickly ended the recording. Her hands shook as she dried them and returned the phone behind the mirror. The tile slipped slightly as she put it back, leaving a scratch on the frame. She stared at it. That small mark, meaningless to anyone else, now meant everything. It was a clue. That something had changed, that she had almost remembered. At breakfast, Leonardo stood behind her, pouring his coffee with one hand and placing the other on her shoulder, softly, almost performative. "You've been quiet," he said. "I'm always quiet," she replied. His hand lingered 1 second longer than necessary. Then he walked away. Marcia was buttering toast. "You're lucky," she said without looking. "Your stepfather notices everything. Most girls your age don't have that kind of care." Lívia nearly choked. The word care had become an insult. Later that day at school, as she took a book from her locker, she felt someone near her, just close enough to feel the air shift. Teo. He didn't speak right away. He looked at the scratch on her hand, a tiny wound from where the tile had slipped last night. "You okay?" he asked. Lívia looked at him for 1 beat too long. "Yes," she lied. He nodded slowly. "You know, I'm doing a project about stories people don't tell, about silence." She didn't respond. "I think you'd be perfect for it." The bell rang. She walked away. But that night, during her 7 minutes, she brought it up. Audio number 128. He asked if I'd tell a story. What would I say? That my mother calls my bruises growing pains? That I hear a child's laugh at night, but there's no child here anymore? Her voice cracked. There was a photo missing. And now I remember. There was a boy. My brother. She stopped recording and stared into the mirror. Not at her face, but at the scratch on the wooden frame. A small thing, but small things break people, and sometimes they wake them up. At school the next day, Lívia could barely concentrate. Her eyes followed the words in her literature book, but her mind played the same loop. There was a boy. There was a missing photo. There was laughter once, and now there's none. After the last class, Teo was waiting at the gate. "Hey," he said gently. "You left this." He held out a small notebook. It wasn't hers. She'd never seen it before. But inside, on the first page, was a sticky note. "Sometimes memory needs a map." She looked at him, stunned. "I think you're looking for something," he said softly. "Maybe this helps." She didn't speak, just took it, and for the first time didn't feel afraid, just suspicious of the fear itself. That night, at exactly 10:37 p.m., the ritual began again. Click, shower on, phone out, record. Audio number 129. There was a child, a boy. I'm starting to remember his name. I think it started with M, maybe. Mateos or Miguel? She flipped through the small notebook Teo gave her. Every page had a prompt. Describe a room you miss. Write about a sound that vanished. Draw what you remember and don't understand. There was a room at the end of the hallway. It used to have toys, blue curtains. I'm sure of it, but now there's a bookshelf, and the door doesn't match the others. She drew it. A door that shouldn't be there. The bookshelf is bolted to the wall. I tried to open it once when I was little. He yelled at me. She stopped. He never yells. Not unless. Silence. She didn't finish the recording. Instead, after drying her hands, she walked down the hallway, slowly, while Leonardo watched TV and Marcia snored on the couch. She stood in front of the bookshelf at the end of the hallway. It looked normal, but she felt it. The wrongness. She tapped gently on the wood, and the sound changed. Hollow. Behind this wall, once, there had been a door. The next day, Lívia skipped lunch and went to the school library. She searched for old records, old neighborhood articles, anything strange from the time she was small. Nothing came up, until she searched the last name Antunes, her mother's maiden name. One article, 10 years old, headline, Family mourns sudden loss of infant son in tragic sleep incident. The boy's name, Miguel Antunes, age 3, her brother. The article said the cause of death was unknown. The family declined autopsy. The body was cremated quickly. Neighbors were told it was SIDS, sudden infant death syndrome. But Lívia remembered something different. Not fire, not ashes. She remembered water. That night, she didn't go to the bathroom at 10:37. She went at 2:13 a.m. The house was asleep. She locked the door, turned on the shower, and whispered into the recorder with trembling lips. Audio number 130. I remember the bath. I remember him crying. I remember someone closing the door. I remember... She dropped the phone. It clattered against the tile, because in that moment the memory crashed down. Her mother's scream. Leonardo saying, "Don't overreact." The water still and cold. and her tiny brother's fingers motionless. Lívia didn't sleep. She sat in bed until dawn, hands clenched, eyes burning. At 6:12 a.m., Marcia knocked gently on her door. "Good morning, daughter." "Did you sleep well?" Lívia stared at the door, said nothing. "There is bread in the kitchen." As footsteps faded, Lívia opened her notebook again. The page with the door drawing was smeared, maybe from steam, maybe from her hands shaking. Underneath it, she wrote a single word in capital letters: trapped. At school, she slipped a folded note into Teo's locker. "I need to show you something." 22:40, my floor. That night, as the digital clock on the microwave turned 22:39, she unlocked the apartment door with the backup key she had hidden in an old biology book. Exactly 1 minute later, Teo entered, quiet as a shadow. Lívia led him down the hallway barefoot, not saying a word. She stopped in front of the bookshelf. "This wasn't here before," she whispered. "Behind it, there used to be a room." Teo examined the shelf. Old screws, misaligned paint. The smell of varnish didn't match the rest of the hallway. He looked at her. "Do you want me to move it?" "I don't know," she said. But she was already pulling a screwdriver from her hoodie pocket. Together, they unscrewed the anchors. The shelf groaned, and then it moved, just enough to reveal a frame. A door, faint blue paint worn with time, scratches near the knob, crayon marks, a child's door, but no handle, just a heavy padlock. Lívia stared at it, frozen. Teo looked over. They locked it from the outside. She felt the world tilt. That night, her 7 minutes began differently. Audio number 131. The room exists. It's real. Teo saw it too. They sealed it off. I don't know why or what's inside, but I think... She swallowed. I think he died in there. Not in the bath. That was just what they told me. But something happened in that room. The next day, Lívia searched every drawer, every closet, and in the back of Marcia's wardrobe, in an envelope labeled Documentos Velos, she found a birth certificate. Miguel Antunes, born March 14th, 20XX, died, no date listed. She stared at the blank line where death should be. She met Teo on the rooftop that evening. "I think he never died," she whispered. Teo was quiet for a long time. Then where is he? She didn't answer, because the truth, the awful, unformed truth, was blooming inside her chest like black mold. Maybe he wasn't dead. Maybe he was hidden. Or maybe he died because of them, and they erased him. All she knew was that no one else had ever spoken his name again. And now she had a locked door, a blank certificate, and a storm rising inside her. It rained the night Lívia stole the padlock key. Marcia had gone to bed early with a migraine. Leonardo was still at the computer in the living room, headphones on, watching one of his online lectures. Lívia crept into the kitchen, opened the biscuit jar where he kept spare keys, and quietly palmed the oldest one, thick, rusted, and oddly out of place. She didn't hesitate. She waited until 2:13 a.m. when both were asleep. She unlocked the door and opened it. The smell hit first: dust, wood, something musty and faintly chemical. The room was untouched, yet preserved. Toys frozen in time. A child's bed, stickers on the wall, faded stars, cartoon animals. A small dresser, a teddy bear too clean. And on the floor, a wet spot. Not fresh, but clearly once water, as if something had leaked from beneath. Lívia stepped inside. The wallpaper peeled at the corners. Her fingers brushed over scribbles etched into the wall. 3 letters, over and over. Mig. Her throat closed. In the corner, half hidden behind a stack of books, she found a wooden chest. She opened it. Inside, drawings. Childlike, frantic, one with a red stick figure and black lines, bars drawn over it. Another with a tall man and a little boy. The tall man had no face. She sat on the floor. She stayed there for what felt like an hour. The next morning, she didn't go to school. She waited for her mother to come out of the bathroom, then said softly, "I opened the room." Marcia froze mid-step. Water still dripped from her hair. "What room?" "You know which one." Her mother's face crumbled like wet paper. "It wasn't supposed to be like that," Marcia whispered. "You told me he died. You told everyone." Marcia looked at the floor. He was sick. And Leo said, "What did he say?" "That the world didn't need to know everything." Lívia stepped back. You let him decide what to do with your son? Marcia didn't answer. Her shoulders sank under invisible weight. That night, Lívia didn't do her 7 minutes. She didn't need to. Instead, she walked into Leonardo's office, holding the drawing of the man with no face. He looked up. "Where did you get that?" "From the room." A pause, then his face changed. Calm, collected as always, but his voice tightened. "You're confused." "I remember now." "No, you think you do." He stood, but she didn't flinch. "I'm not 8 anymore," she said. "You don't scare me." Leonardo stepped forward, slow. "Be careful, Lívia." She smiled. "I've already started being dangerous." Then she pulled out her phone, the old one, the one that had recorded every confession, every whisper, every lie, and hit play. The room was silent as the voice played. Audio number 116. "He told me I was lucky, that some girls had worse, that families aren't perfect and I should stop asking questions. He said it while standing in the hallway where Miguel's room used to be. I remember his hand on the doorknob. I remember the lock. I remember my mother crying in the kitchen but doing nothing." Leonardo stared at her, unmoving. "Do you think anyone will believe this?" he said. His voice was steady, arrogant. "A teenager with some creepy recordings?" Lívia didn't answer. She walked toward the front door. "I already sent the file to Teo," she said, opening it, "and to Sister Bianca. And I wrote a letter with names, dates, photos, drawings. I'm not the one. Who should be afraid now?" He didn't follow. He didn't speak. Marcia, standing frozen behind him, looked down, not at Lívia, not at Leonardo, just down, as if the floor were safer than facing the truth. Outside, the air was colder than she expected. Teo was waiting near the elevator. He didn't ask questions, just nodded. "You did it," he said. "No, I started it," Lívia corrected. They walked in silence for a moment. Then she asked, "Do you think people can survive something like that and still build a life?" Teo tilted his head, thoughtful. "I think people like you don't just survive. You rewrite the ending." 2 weeks later, an anonymous file was delivered to the school, to the social worker's office, and to a journalist who ran a podcast about forgotten crimes. The story spread fast. The press focused on the psychological abuse, the hidden room, the unregistered death, but they didn't know the whole story. Only Lívia did. At a small shelter home across the city, Lívia sat in a shared room with a notebook open. Not Teo's notebook, hers. On the first page, she had written, 7 minutes was all I had. Now I have time. Now I have space. And most of all, I have my voice. She picked up her pen. She began to write, and for the first time, her voice didn't need to be whispered behind a mirror. It rang out clearly, loud, unapologetic, free. Lívia found her voice in the only place she was allowed to speak, hidden, afraid and counting down the minutes. But when the past finally knocked back, she didn't whisper anymore. If this story shook you, hit like, subscribe, and turn on the bell so you don't miss the next one. Here at Twistem TV, every secret has a story, and every story has a twist.